Next up, we have David Anthony, who's been a professor of African history at UC Santa Cruz for more than 30 years. And outside of the world of academia, he's had a long-standing record of service in the greater Santa Cruz community. While doing my research for tonight's event, I stumbled upon his Rate My Professor page. And as one of his former students put it, he is, quote, an amazing orator and master of a million languages. And by the way, all the students suggest that you should pay attention when he's talking. Racial reckonings like the one that took place last year have happened intermittently throughout this country's history. And from these movements, great leaders have emerged who've pushed for cultural change and wider acceptance of those who've been forced to live on the margins of society. But change comes slowly, and it happens by not letting up and not letting the conversation be silenced. And that's one of the themes that David will be touching on tonight. So without further ado, David Anthony.
Thank you, Tulsi. I want to thank first Lookout for this invitation to be part of this community conversation, and everyone who is participating on any level. The panelists, the audience, the people behind the scenes, logistically, who've done all kinds of work that we don't necessarily know about, without whom it would not be possible. Let me start off by saying that this has been and still continues to be a difficult week for me, and I think for many other people. We have the anniversary of the Tulsa, Oklahoma, May 24th, 1921 pogrom. I'm partly of Oklahoman, Afro-Native, Chickasaw Freedmen descent. My grandmother, maternal grandmother, was from Oklahoma, from a little town called Wynnewood, which is about 160 miles from Tulsa. She left Oklahoma in 1921, and I never asked her what drove her away. Was it, in fact, that pogrom? In addition to everything else we are commemorating and we are working through right now, down to the terrible violence that has unfolded today in our neighbor, San Jose. Because this is a very violent society. There are too many guns. I sometimes wonder how to proceed. I often feel as if I'm speaking to the choir, people already clear about the existence of racism and white supremacy as problems and dedicated to do something to end it. But there are people beyond the choir who we don't reach, who will not come to attend this kind of meeting, for whom it would make a difference because we are all in this together. I want to start by taking a step back as we consider the anniversary, this very sad anniversary of the extrajudicial execution of Mr. Floyd. And that is to respect Mr. George Floyd, Ms. Breonna Taylor, Ms. Sandra Bland, all the other people who have lost their lives. We should not take liberties when commemorating these losses of murdered martyrs. We were not on a first name basis with any of them when they were alive. We were introduced to them only when and because of their assassinations. Remembering them with respect means first honoring them by addressing them respectfully, using the honorific preceding their given names. Say their names with respect. Mr. George Floyd's murderer had this grown man calling out to his mama. The most disrespectful, vile degradation anyone could be subjected to. So respect is the first thing that we need to bring to this table as we consider what these lives meant and might mean in the future. They were people. They had souls. They had families. They had histories. They deserve that from us as the beginning. In terms of continuity, unfortunately, so many of these stories are distressingly familiar. I was 69 years old a couple of weeks ago. I would have liked to think that by the time I was part of the elder community, that racism as I knew it, as I read of it, as I heard of it, as I experienced it, intergenerationally, might have been diminished to some degree. And in fact, that is not the case. It is still with us. It is still alive. And that continuity is sometimes crippling to confront. As a human being, I go catatonic. I am deeply depressed. I feel this. And I have to manufacture some enthusiasm to go forward because I'm not done. But I also know that through the arbitrary and capricious qualities of race consciousness that expresses itself in terms of supremacy, that anyone can end my life, particularly someone who has a badge and considers that that gives them the right to do whatever they feel they want to. So I'm always looking around, making sure if I'm going to circle the block, do I have my wallet? Do I have my identification? Those kinds of things, fundamental things. Differential impacts. I and my loved ones live with this consciousness and this concern every day and night, 24/7. My 3 grown children, their children, my grandchildren, all are at risk. I'm heartened to discover allies I did not know I had. Let that continue. Third, silencing and avoidance are not options. We cannot sidestep this. We cannot get over this. We cannot imagine that we can declare victory and move on. We have to move through this. We have to come to terms with it, and we have to do so as members of communities who are indissolubly linked. We are connected. Not just connected when we declare a common foe, but to understand that those things that bring us together are the things that inform who we are as human beings. We all have the same needs. The needs for shelter and nourishment and acceptance and love, being seen and being heard. But we also have the right to live in peace, to live with respect, to determine our circumstances, to protect those we love. Those fundamental concerns as human beings should always be paramount. There should be nothing more important than that. And once we achieve that, then we will have moved into something that really makes a difference in the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that, David. That was incredibly powerful. And, you know, speaking to the point of respect, you know, oftentimes we can become desensitized and we can be, we can feel kind of disconnection to what's happening, especially when it happens so many times and it happens in such brutal ways at every single time. Um, and I can tell you a quick story before we go to our next presenter. Uh, I came here from Houston in October, and last year, around this time, right after uh, Mr. George Floyd was murdered, um, there were marches and protests and rallies around the country, and Houston is his hometown. And Houston's not a protest city, but 60,000 people came out to walk with the Floyd family. And um, when I was there, walking alongside them, covering that protest as a journalist, that was the first time I felt very much connected to this story that had become national headlines, in a way that you know, as a journalist, we have to recognize and also reflect on as we cover these things. And it's truly a very terrible feeling to walk alongside a family that suffered so much loss. So thank you for sharing that.